Lucas Bennett was taking his usual shortcut through the woods behind his house, the same path he'd walked 100 times before. The afternoon rain had finally stopped, leaving everything damp and smelling like wet earth and pine needles. He was thinking about the math homework waiting for him at home and wondering if his mom would let him play video games after dinner when he heard it. The sound stopped him in his tracks. It was high-pitched and desperate, like nothing he'd ever heard before. Not quite a bird's cry, not quite a cat's yowl. Something in between, and somehow sadder than both. The sound had a quality that made Lucas's chest hurt, like hearing something in terrible pain. Most 11-year-old kids would have run straight home. The woods could be dangerous, especially this deep in. There were rumors of coyotes, and last year Mrs. Patterson from down the street swore she'd seen a black bear near the creek. But Lucas wasn't most kids. He'd been the type of child who brought home injured robins with broken wings, who fed stray cats even though his dad complained about the food bills, who once spent an entire afternoon trying to help a turtle cross a busy road. So instead of running, Lucas followed the sound. He pushed through wet bushes that soaked his jeans and ducked under low-hanging branches that dripped cold water down his neck. The keening got louder as he got closer, more desperate, almost like whatever was making it knew someone was coming and was calling for help. Then he saw it, and his brain struggled to make sense of what his eyes were showing him. There was a creature caught in an old hunter's trap, one of those rusty metal jaws that had probably been sitting in these woods for decades. The thing trapped in it was about the size of a house cat, but it definitely wasn't a cat. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered even in the dim forest light, shifting colors from deep blue to purple to green depending on how the light hit them. It had wings, though they were crumpled and bent at angles that made Lucas wince. One wing was caught in the trap's teeth, and Lucas could see a thin line of golden blood where the metal had pierced the delicate membrane. The creature's head turned toward him, and Lucas found himself staring into eyes that were far too intelligent for an animal. They were amber-colored and slitted like a cat's, but there was something in that gaze that felt almost human. Fear, yes, but also recognition. Understanding. This thing knew Lucas was there, and it was smart enough to be making a decision about what to do next. It opened its mouth, and Lucas saw rows of tiny, needle-sharp teeth. The creature's throat glowed orange for a second, and then a small burst of flame shot out toward Lucas. But it was weak, barely more than sparks, and it died out before reaching him. The creature slumped, exhausted from even that small effort. Lucas realized several things at once. First, this was some kind of dragon. An actual, real dragon. Second, it was just a baby, probably not much older than a kitten. Third, it was terrified and in serious pain. And fourth, despite the fact that it had just tried to breathe fire at him, it wasn't being aggressive. It was being defensive. It was scared of him, and it had every right to be. "Hey," Lucas said softly, using the same gentle voice he used with frightened animals. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." The creature watched him with those intelligent amber eyes, its small chest heaving with rapid breaths. Lucas could see it trembling, though he wasn't sure if that was from fear, pain, or cold from the rain. He looked around for something to help pry open the trap. There was a fallen branch nearby, thick enough to use as a lever. Lucas grabbed it and slowly approached the trap, moving carefully and deliberately so he wouldn't startle the creature more than it already was. "I know you're scared," Lucas kept talking, his voice low and calm. "That trap hurts, doesn't it? I'm going to get you out. Just don't bite me, okay? Or burn me. Please don't burn me." He positioned the branch under the trap's jaw and started to pry it open. The metal was old and stubborn, rusted in place after years in the weather. Lucas had to use all his strength, his arms shaking with the effort. The creature watched him the entire time, its eyes never leaving his face. The trap finally started to give way, the jaws separating slowly. The creature's wing was still caught, and Lucas knew this next part was going to hurt. "Okay, buddy," he said. "This is going to hurt a little more before it gets better. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." He gave one final hard push on the lever, and the trap sprang open. The creature yanked its wing free with a cry of pain that made Lucas's heart clench. And then, before Lucas could even react, the creature lunged forward and bit him. The teeth sank into Lucas's hand, sharp and burning. He yelled in pain but forced himself not to jerk away, knowing that would just make it worse. "Oh. Okay, I get it. You're scared. But I just helped you." The creature released him and tried to launch itself into the air, but its injured wing wouldn't work properly. It crashed back down into the wet leaves, struggling and crying out in distress. Lucas could see that the wing was badly damaged, maybe even broken. "You can't fly," Lucas said, watching the creature's failed attempts. "You're going to hurt yourself worse. Look, I know you don't trust me, but you need help. Real help. Please, just let me take you somewhere safe." He pulled off his jacket, ignoring the pain in his bitten hand and the blood that was now dripping from it. Moving slowly, telegraphing every motion, he approached the creature again. It tried to scramble away, but it was too weak and hurt. When Lucas draped the jacket over it, the creature struggled for a moment, then went still, probably realizing it didn't have the energy to fight anymore. Lucas carefully bundled up the jacket with the creature inside, making sure to support its body properly. It was warmer than he expected, like holding a heating pad. He could feel it trembling through the fabric. "I've got you," Lucas said. "You're safe now. I promise." The walk back to his house felt longer than usual. Lucas's hand throbbed where the creature had bitten him, and he was pretty sure he was going to need a tetanus shot or something. His parents were going to freak out. They'd probably ground him for bringing home something dangerous. But he couldn't just leave it in the woods to die. That wasn't who Lucas was. His treehouse seemed like the best option. It was his private space, and his parents almost never checked it. He could keep the creature there while he figured out what to do next. Maybe call Dr. Martinez, the vet who'd helped him with injured animals before. Though he had no idea how to explain that this particular animal was a dragon. Lucas climbed up into the treehouse, careful not to jostle his passenger too much. He set the jacket bundle down gently on the old cushions he kept up there. The creature poked its head out, looking around warily at its new surroundings. "Okay, so, welcome to my treehouse," Lucas said, feeling slightly ridiculous talking to a dragon. "I know it's not much, but it's dry and safe. Let me get you some water and food." He climbed back down and snuck into his kitchen, grateful that his mom was in her home office on a work call. He grabbed a bowl of water, some leftover chicken from last night's dinner, and the first aid kit from under the sink. His hand was really starting to hurt now, and he was leaving small drops of blood on the kitchen floor that he had to quickly wipe up with paper towels. Back in the treehouse, Lucas found the creature had crawled over to look out the window. It turned when he entered, and for a long moment, they just stared at each other. The creature's amber eyes studied him with that unnerving intelligence, and Lucas had the distinct feeling he was being judged. "Here," Lucas said, setting down the water and chicken. "I don't know what dragons eat, but chicken seemed like a good guess. And you probably need water after being stuck in that trap." The creature sniffed at the offerings, then began to eat cautiously, never taking its eyes off Lucas. While it ate, Lucas examined his bitten hand. The puncture wounds were deeper than he thought, and still bleeding. He used the first aid kit to clean and bandage it as best he could, wincing at the sting of antiseptic. By the time he finished, the creature had eaten all the chicken and drunk most of the water. It looked tired, its eyes drooping. Lucas grabbed an old blanket and gently draped it over the cushions, creating a sort of nest. "You should rest," he said. "That wing needs time to heal. I'll come check on you in the morning, bring more food. Just, stay quiet, okay? My parents can't know you're here. Not yet." The creature curled up in the blanket nest, its tail wrapping around its body. As Lucas climbed back down from the treehouse, he looked back one more time. The creature was watching him, and if Lucas didn't know better, he'd swear there was gratitude in those amber eyes. That night, Lucas barely slept. His hand hurt, and he kept worrying about the creature in his treehouse. Was it warm enough? Was it scared? Would it still be there in the morning, or would it have tried to fly away and hurt itself worse? When dawn finally came, Lucas rushed outside before his parents woke up. He climbed into the treehouse, his heart pounding with anticipation and worry. The creature was gone. The blanket was pushed aside, and the only signs it had ever been there were some scorch marks on the wooden floor where its feet had been and a single iridescent scale lying on the cushion. Lucas picked up the scale, feeling its smooth surface and watching it shimmer in the early morning light. He pocketed the scale and climbed back down, feeling oddly disappointed. He'd saved the creature's life, but he'd never even learned what it was or where it came from. Oh well. At least it was safe now, wherever it had gone. Lucas went inside to get ready for school, completely unaware that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Because that afternoon, when he got off the school bus and walked up to his house, he would find his backyard filled with dozens of dragons, all waiting patiently to meet the human boy who had saved one of their own. Lucas stepped off the school bus that afternoon, tired from a math test and looking forward to a snack and maybe some TV time. He was halfway up his driveway when he noticed something was wrong. His neighbor, Mr. Patterson, was standing at the end of his own driveway, staring at Lucas's backyard with his mouth hanging open. Mrs. Chen from across the street was on her phone, talking rapidly in a panicked voice. And there were way too many cars parked along the curb. Then Lucas saw his backyard, and his brain refused to process what his eyes were showing him. Dragons. Dozens of them. Maybe 50 or 60, ranging from the size of large dogs to creatures as big as horses. They were everywhere, sitting on the grass, perched on the fence, clustered around his mom's vegetable garden. Their scales caught the afternoon sunlight in a rainbow of colors: deep blues, brilliant greens, blood reds, and shimmering golds. Some had wings folded against their backs. Others had horns curving from their heads. But all of them were completely still, sitting like statues and staring at his house with an intensity that made Lucas's skin prickle. His mom was visible through the kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear, her face pale. His dad stood on the back porch, holding a baseball bat like it would do anything against creatures that could probably breathe fire. Lucas. His mom's voice came from the front door. She'd spotted him and was waving frantically. Get inside. Now. But Lucas couldn't move. He was frozen, staring at the dragons. Because he recognized something. That pattern of scales, that particular shade of amber in some of their eyes. These were the same species as the creature he'd saved last night. A police car pulled up, lights flashing but no siren. 2 officers got out, hands on their weapons but not drawing them. Son, one of them called to Lucas. We need you to move away from the backyard slowly. Don't run. Don't make sudden movements. More vehicles were arriving. News vans with satellite dishes. Black SUVs that screamed government. A truck from animal control. Within minutes, Lucas's quiet suburban street had turned into chaos, all centered on his backyard full of dragons. They're not hurting anyone, Lucas said, and he was surprised by how calm his voice sounded. They're just sitting there. They've been sitting there for 3 hours, the police officer said. Ever since about noon. Haven't moved, haven't attacked, just watching. We've tried to approach them, but they won't let us get close. They move away but they don't leave. It's like they're waiting for something. Lucas felt his heart start to pound. They were waiting. They were waiting for him. Lucas Bennett. A woman's voice came from behind him. Lucas turned to see someone stepping out of one of the black SUVs. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and glasses that made her eyes look slightly too large. She wore practical clothes, khakis and a button-up shirt, and carried a tablet covered in notes. I'm Dr. Rebecca Walsh. I'm a xenolinguist with the Department of Interspecies Communication. Can I talk to you for a moment? Interspecies communication. Lucas repeated. That's a real thing. It is now, Dr. Walsh said with a slight smile. These creatures started appearing about a month ago. Small sightings at first, then larger groups. We've been trying to understand them, communicate with them, figure out where they came from. But they've been elusive, keeping their distance from humans. Until today. Until they all showed up here. She looked at Lucas with sharp, intelligent eyes. Do you know why they might be here, Lucas? Lucas thought about lying. But something told him that wouldn't help the situation. I found one last night, he admitted. A small one, caught in a trap in the woods. It was hurt. I freed it and took care of it. It was gone this morning. Dr. Walsh's eyes went wide. You rescued one? A juvenile? Lucas, do you have any idea what that might mean to them? She started typing rapidly on her tablet. In every interaction we've documented between these creatures and other species, and yes, they've been observed on other worlds besides Earth, they show incredibly complex social behaviors. Gift-giving, communal defense, what appears to be a sophisticated moral code. Helping one of their young. She looked up at the dragons in the backyard. That would be significant. I just didn't want it to die, Lucas said quietly. That might be exactly why this is happening, Dr. Walsh said. I need you to do something for me, Lucas. I need you to go into your backyard. I'll go with you, but you need to lead. What? No way. Lucas's mom had emerged from the house and overheard. You're not putting my son in danger. Mrs. Bennett, I understand your concern, Dr. Walsh said calmly. But I don't think Lucas is in danger. I think he might be the only one who isn't. These creatures have been here for hours. They've had multiple opportunities to hurt people and haven't. They move aside when approached but don't leave. They're demonstrating what I would call patience. Expectation. They're waiting for someone specific. Lucas's dad had joined them, still holding his baseball bat. This is insane. Those are dangerous animals. They're not animals, Dr. Walsh interrupted. They're showing problem-solving abilities on par with dolphins or great apes. Maybe higher. And Lucas helped one of them. In their culture, that might mean his owed recognition. Possibly debt. We need to find out. Lucas looked at his parents' terrified faces, then back at the dragons sitting quietly in his backyard. None of them had moved. None of them had shown any aggression. They were just waiting. I'll do it, Lucas said. Lucas, no, his mom started. Mom, I think Dr. Walsh is right. They're here because of me. And they're not going to leave until... I don't know, until something happens. I have to try. After several more minutes of argument, and after Dr. Walsh convinced 3 police officers and 2 military personnel to stand ready nearby, Lucas walked slowly toward his backyard. His parents watched from the porch, his mom gripping his dad's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. The moment Lucas stepped into the backyard, every single dragon turned to look at him. It was like being hit with a wave of attention, dozens of intelligent eyes all focused on him at once. Lucas felt his breath catch in his throat. Up close, the dragons were even more magnificent and terrifying than they'd seen from the driveway. Then the smallest dragon moved. It was about the size of the creature Lucas had rescued, with the same iridescent blue-purple scales. It approached slowly, its movements careful and deliberate, like it was trying not to startle him. When it got within a few feet of Lucas, it stopped and lowered its head. In its mouth, held gently between those sharp teeth, was something that glowed. The dragon dropped it at Lucas's feet and stepped back. Lucas knelt down slowly and picked it up. It was a gemstone, about the size of a golf ball, and it seemed to have fire trapped inside it. The stone was warm in his palm, and the light inside it pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. Behind him, Lucas heard Dr. Walsh gasp. "That's a gift," she said, her voice filled with awe. "In every culture we've observed them interact with, they give gifts to those who help them. Precious items, usually things from their home. But we've never seen them gather like this. Never seen so many of them in one place for a single individual." The small dragon that had given Lucas the stone made a sound, a series of chirps and low rumbles that sounded almost like speech. The other dragons responded with similar sounds, creating a chorus that was beautiful and alien and somehow solemn. Dr. Walsh was recording everything on her tablet, her hands shaking slightly with excitement. "This is incredible. Lucas, I think they're acknowledging you. Recognizing what you did. In dragon culture, based on what we've been able to observe, saving a member of their clan, especially a young one, creates what we might call a life debt. But this..." She gestured at all the dragons. "This is more than a simple debt. This is the entire clan saying you're under their protection." "Protection from what?" Lucas asked, still staring at the glowing gemstone. "From everything," Dr. Walsh said. "From anyone who might wish you harm. Lucas, I think you've just been adopted by an entire species." Another dragon approached, this one much larger, with deep red scales that looked like polished rubies. It moved with obvious authority, and the other dragons shifted to make way for it. This dragon carried something too, a piece of fabric that shimmered like it was woven from starlight. It laid the fabric at Lucas's feet, then did something that made everyone watching catch their breath. The dragon bowed. Not just lowering its head, but actually bending its front legs in what was clearly a gesture of deep respect. One by one, the other dragons approached. Each one brought a gift, more gemstones, pieces of metal that looked like no alloy found on Earth, crystals that hummed with energy, beautiful feathers from creatures Lucas had never seen. They laid their offerings at his feet and bowed, and the pile of gifts grew until it surrounded Lucas like a small treasure hoard. Lucas's mom was crying on the porch. His dad had lowered the baseball bat, looking stunned. The police officers, the military personnel, the news crews, everyone was recording, photographing, trying to document this moment that no one could quite believe was happening. When the last dragon had presented its gift, the small blue one, Lucas was certain now that it was the one he'd rescued, approached again. It made a sound, a gentle chirping trill, and then it did something that made Lucas's heart melt. It rubbed its head against his leg, like a cat seeking affection. Lucas reached down slowly and touched the dragon's head. Its scales were warm and smooth under his fingers. The dragon leaned into his touch, making a sound that was unmistakably a purr. "They're not leaving, are they?" Lucas said to Dr. Walsh. "No," she confirmed, watching the dragons settle back into their positions around the yard. "I don't think they are. Not until they're sure you're safe. Lucas, you've just become the most important 11-year-old on the planet. These creatures chose Earth as a refuge about a month ago. We've been trying to establish contact, to understand their intentions. Some governments think they're invaders. Others think they're explorers. But you've done what no scientist or diplomat could do. You've made them trust a human. Lucas looked at the dragons surrounding his backyard, at the pile of impossible gifts at his feet, at the small dragon still pressed against his leg. He thought about the scared, hurt creature he'd found in the trap, and how all he'd wanted was to help it. I just didn't want it to die, he said again. Sometimes, Dr. Walsh said softly, the most important things start with the simplest intentions. You showed kindness without expecting anything in return. You helped something that was different and frightening because it needed help. And now? She gestured at the dragons. Now you've become a bridge between two species. Whether you wanted to or not. Lucas Bennett had woken up that morning as a normal kid worried about a math test. He was going to bed that night as the human boy who had somehow earned the loyalty of an entire dragon clan. And tomorrow, the real complications would begin. By the third day, Lucas's street looked like a disaster zone mixed with a carnival. News trucks lined both sides of the road, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Military vehicles had set up a perimeter 3 blocks out. Curious onlookers gathered behind police barriers, taking selfies with the dragons visible in the background. Someone was selling t-shirts that said "I survived the dragon invasion" from a van parked 2 streets over. Lucas couldn't go to school. Actually, his entire school had been temporarily closed because half the student body wasn't showing up anyway. Their parents were either too scared or too fascinated by what was happening in the Bennett family's backyard. Lucas's mom had stopped going to work. His dad had taken emergency leave. They were essentially prisoners in their own home, except the bars of their prison were made of cameras, questions, and dragons. The government people showed up on day 4. Not Dr. Walsh this time, but serious men and women in dark suits who didn't smile and used words like national security and potential threat assessment. They sat in Lucas's living room, which felt way too small for the conversation they were having, and laid out their proposal. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, the lead agent said, a stern woman named Agent Crawford, we believe it would be in everyone's best interest if your family relocated to a secure facility. Temporarily, of course. Just until we can better understand the situation with these creatures. They're dragons, Lucas said from where he sat on the stairs, technically not part of the conversation but refusing to leave. And they have names. At least, I think they do. The small blue one responds when I call him Spark. Agent Crawford gave him a look that was probably supposed to be patient but came off as patronizing. Yes. The dragons. The point is, Lucas, you seem to have formed some kind of bond with them. That makes you valuable for research purposes. It also potentially makes you a target. A target for what? Lucas's dad asked, his voice tight with stress. We don't know, Agent Crawford admitted. That's the problem. These creatures appeared on Earth a month ago with no warning. We don't know where they came from, what they want, or what they're capable of. The fact that they've all congregated here, around your son, is concerning. They're not hurting anyone, Lucas protested. They've been here for days and haven't done anything aggressive. Yet, another agent added. They haven't done anything yet. But we have no idea what might trigger a response. What if someone tries to hurt you, Lucas? What would the dragons do? What if they decide to expand their territory beyond your backyard? What if more of them arrive? Lucas's mom looked like she hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. What exactly are you proposing? A facility in Nevada, Agent Crawford said. Secure, isolated, equipped with the best scientific minds in the country. You'd be comfortable there. Lucas could continue his education. And we could study the dragon-human interaction in a controlled environment. You want to put us in a cage, Lucas's dad said flatly. We want to keep you safe while we figure out what's happening, Agent Crawford corrected. And frankly, Mr. Bennett, we're not just thinking about your family. There are concerns about public safety. If these dragons pose a threat. They don't. Lucas stood up, his fists clenched. How many times do we have to say it? They're not dangerous. They're just here. But even as he said it, Lucas could see the fear in his parents' eyes. They were overwhelmed. The constant attention, the disruption to their lives, the uncertainty of it all, it was breaking them down. His mom had started talking about moving to her sister's place in Oregon, getting away from everything. His dad had stopped arguing with the government people, which scared Lucas more than anything. That night, unable to sleep, Lucas slipped out to the backyard. The dragons were still there, settled in for the night. Most of them had their eyes closed, but Lucas knew they weren't really asleep. Spark, the small blue dragon, perked up immediately when Lucas appeared and trotted over to him. Lucas sat down on the grass, and Spark curled up next to him, warm and solid. Other dragons stirred, watching but not approaching, giving them space. "I don't know what to do," Lucas whispered to Spark. "Everyone's scared. My parents want to leave. The government wants to lock us all up and study us. And I don't even know why you're all here. I just helped you because you were hurt. I didn't ask for any of this." Spark made a soft chirping sound and nudged Lucas's hand with his nose. It was comforting, in a weird way, having this alien creature treat him like a friend. That's when Lucas noticed something he'd missed before. One of the larger dragons, the red one that had bowed to him that first day, was doing something strange. It had spread out what looked like papers or maps on the grass and was studying them intently. Its claw would point at different sections, and it would make sounds to other dragons nearby, who would respond with their own vocalizations. Lucas stood up slowly and walked closer, Spark trailing behind him. The red dragon looked up as he approached but didn't seem alarmed. In fact, it shifted slightly, like it was making room for Lucas to see what it was looking at. The papers weren't papers at all. They were some kind of flexible material that glowed faintly, and they showed images. One looked like a star map. Another showed what might have been architectural plans. A third displayed what looked like Earth, with various points marked on the continents. "You're studying us," Lucas breathed. "Not just protecting me. You're learning about Earth." The red dragon made a sound, a complex series of tones that Lucas wished he could understand. But even without words, the meaning seemed clear. These dragons weren't just camping out in his backyard. They were observing, analyzing, trying to understand the world they'd found themselves in. Over the next few days, Lucas started paying more attention. He noticed that the dragons watched everything with intense focus. When cars drove by, multiple dragons would track them with their eyes, their heads moving in unison. When his neighbor Mr. Patterson mowed his lawn, 3 dragons spent an hour watching the process, making sounds to each other that seemed like discussion. One morning, Lucas had an idea. He grabbed some of his old picture books from when he was younger, books about animals, plants, how things worked. He brought them outside and set them down near the dragons. At first, nothing happened. Then one of the smaller dragons, a green one with copper-colored eyes, approached cautiously. It sniffed the books, then very carefully used its claw to flip open the cover of one. The dragon stared at the pages for a long moment, then made an excited chirping sound. Other dragons crowded around. Lucas watched in amazement as the dragons examined the books. They turned pages carefully, their sharp claws somehow managing not to tear the paper. They seemed particularly interested in diagrams and pictures, spending long minutes studying images of how engines worked or how plants grew. "They're intelligent," Lucas said when Dr. Walsh stopped by later that day. She'd become a regular visitor, the only government person Lucas actually liked. "Really intelligent. Not just animal smart. They're trying to learn about us." Dr. Walsh was taking notes as fast as she could write. "Lucas, this is remarkable. We've suspected they had advanced intelligence, but we've never seen them interact with human information like this. They've been too cautious, keeping their distance. But with you." She smiled. "With you, they feel safe enough to show curiosity." "Why though?" Lucas asked. "Why do they trust me?" "Because you helped one of their young without hesitation," Dr. Walsh said. "In dragon culture, from what we've been able to observe on other worlds, the young are sacred. Protecting them is the highest priority. When you saved Spark, I love that you named him. By the way, you proved you weren't a threat. More than that, you proved humans could be kind, even to something alien and potentially dangerous." Lucas thought about that while he watched the green dragon carefully turn another page. "Dr. Walsh, where did they come from? Why are they here?" Dr. Walsh's expression grew serious. "We think they're refugees, Lucas. We've picked up energy signatures that suggest massive destruction in a nearby star system. We think their home world was destroyed, or at least became uninhabitable. They came to Earth because Earth can support them. But they didn't know if we'd welcome them or attack them. So they've been hiding," Lucas said. "Testing us. Watching from a distance to see if we're friendly or hostile." "Exactly. And then you rescued Spark. You showed them that at least some humans are capable of compassion, even toward something strange and frightening. That's why they're here, Lucas. That's why they're protecting you and studying Earth. You're their proof that humans and dragons might be able to coexist." That night, Lucas couldn't stop thinking about it. These dragons had lost their home. They were scared and uncertain about their future, just like he'd been scared and uncertain every time he'd been moved to a new foster home before his parents adopted him 3 years ago. He understood what it felt like to be in a strange place, not knowing if he'd be accepted or rejected. The next morning, Lucas made a decision. Instead of just leaving books, he set up his tablet on the porch, protected under an awning, and started playing videos. Educational stuff at first, documentaries about Earth, about human history, about how cities worked. The dragons gathered around, watching with rapt attention. Then Lucas played music. Classical, rock, pop, jazz, all different kinds. The dragons' reactions were fascinating. Some seemed to prefer certain types over others. The red dragon appeared to like classical music, its eyes half closing in what looked like contentment. The green one bobbed its head to rock music. Spark seemed to love everything, moving his body in what might have been dragon dancing. Lucas's dad found him sitting on the porch steps, watching dragons watch TV. "What are you doing, Lucas?" "Teaching them," Lucas said simply. "They want to learn about us. They want to understand humans. So I'm showing them." His dad sat down next to him, tired lines around his eyes. "The government's getting more insistent. Agent Crawford called again today. They want an answer by the end of the week." "We can't go, Dad," Lucas said firmly. "If we leave, the dragons will follow. And then people will definitely panic. But if we stay, if we keep doing this, showing them we're not a threat, learning about them, maybe we can figure out a way for everyone to be okay." "You're 11 years old, Lucas. You shouldn't have to figure out interspecies diplomacy." "I know," Lucas agreed. "But I'm the only one they trust right now. And Dad, they're just trying to survive. Just like anyone would. They lost everything. Their whole world. Don't they deserve a chance?" Lucas's dad didn't answer right away. He just sat there, watching a group of alien dragons learn about human civilization through YouTube videos playing on his son's tablet. Finally, he sighed. "Your mom's not going to like this. But you're right. Running away won't solve anything." He put his arm around Lucas's shoulders. "So I guess we're staying. And I guess we're going to figure this out together, somehow." On the tablet, a documentary about human kindness was playing. It showed people helping each other during disasters, rescuing animals, building communities. The dragons watched it all, their intelligent eyes reflecting the glow of the screen. And Lucas hoped, desperately hoped, that they understood that humans were capable of both fear and compassion, and that maybe, just maybe, compassion could win. Retry S. Everything changed on day 12. Lucas woke up to a sound he'd never heard from the dragons before, a deep, resonant alarm call that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. He rushed to his window and saw the dragons in his backyard standing at attention, their wings partially spread, their bodies tense. Something was wrong. He ran downstairs to find his parents already awake, huddled around the TV with Dr. Walsh, who had apparently arrived before dawn. The news was playing footage that made Lucas's stomach drop. Military helicopters circling a group of dragons in Montana. Soldiers surrounding dragons that had been peacefully resting near a lake in Germany. Tanks rolling toward a dragon settlement that had formed in the Australian outback. And then, as Lucas watched in horror, the footage showed missiles launching. "No," Lucas whispered. "No, no, no. General Harrison issued the order 3 hours ago," Dr. Walsh said, her voice shaking with anger and fear. He convinced the Joint Chiefs that the dragons were preparing for an invasion. "He said their gathering around you was reconnaissance, that they were using you to learn our weaknesses. He ordered simultaneous strikes on major dragon populations worldwide." On the TV, one of the missiles hit. The explosion lit up the screen, and Lucas saw dragons scattering, some falling from the sky. The news anchor's voice was saying something about neutralizing the threat, but Lucas couldn't focus on the words. He could only see the dragons, creatures that had shown nothing but curiosity and peaceful intent, being attacked for no reason except fear. In the backyard, the dragons were making sounds Lucas had never heard before. Not the chirps and trills he'd grown used to, but something darker. Growls and roars that sounded like anger, like grief, like preparation for war. The red dragon, the one Lucas thought of as the leader, spread its wings fully. Other dragons did the same. Their scales seemed to shimmer with heat, and Lucas realized they were getting ready to breathe fire. Real fire, not the weak sparks that Spark had managed when injured. These dragons were preparing to fight back. "They're going to retaliate," Dr. Walsh said, reading something on her tablet with growing panic. "We're getting reports from all over. Dragons are moving toward military installations. Lucas, they're going to war. They're going to defend themselves, and if they do, everyone's going to die, Lucas finished. He could see it playing out in his mind. The dragons would attack to protect themselves. The military would escalate. More weapons, bigger bombs. The dragons would fight harder. It would spiral into a conflict that neither side could win, that would destroy both species. And it was all happening because of fear and misunderstanding. Because the humans didn't understand that the dragons were refugees, not invaders. Because the military saw a threat instead of beings just trying to survive. Lucas made a decision in that moment that was probably insane, definitely dangerous, and absolutely necessary. He ran outside, still in his pajamas, bare feet hitting the cold grass. "Stop!" he yelled at the dragons. They turned to look at him, their eyes burning with anger and pain. "Please, don't fight back. I know you're hurting. I know they attacked you for no reason. But if you fight, it's just going to get worse." The red dragon made a sound that was almost like speech, harsh and guttural. Spark moved to Lucas's side, pressing against his leg, making frightened whimpering noises. Dr. Walsh had followed Lucas outside. "Lucas, get back. They're too agitated. They might. They won't hurt me," Lucas said with more confidence than he felt. He looked up at the red dragon, the leader, and spoke directly to it. "I need to fix this. I need to stop the fighting before everyone dies. But I can't do it from here. I need you to take me to the other dragons. The ones being attacked. I need to show both sides that this is wrong." Dr. Walsh was already translating what Lucas said into the series of tones and sounds they'd been using to communicate with the dragons. The red dragon listened, its eyes fixed on Lucas with an intensity that was almost frightening. Lucas stepped forward, right up to the massive creature. Up close, he could feel the heat radiating from its scales, could see his reflection in its large, intelligent eyes. "Please," he said quietly. "Let me try to save both our species. Take me to them." For a long moment, nothing happened. The dragon just stared at him. Then, slowly, it lowered its body to the ground and extended one wing, creating a ramp of sorts. An invitation. "Lucas, no." His mom's voice came from the porch. She and his dad were there, having followed him outside. "You are not getting on that thing." "Mom, I have to," Lucas said, and his voice cracked slightly because he was terrified, but he couldn't let that stop him. "People are dying. Dragons are dying. And it's happening because nobody understands each other. I'm the only one they trust. I'm the only one who can stop this." "You're 11 years old," his dad shouted. "This isn't your responsibility." "Yes, it is," Lucas said, and he meant it. "I saved Spark. I started this whole thing. And now I'm the only bridge between humans and dragons. If I don't try, who will?" He turned back to the red dragon before his parents could stop him and carefully climbed onto its back. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth under his hands. He had no saddle, no harness, nothing to hold onto except the ridge of scales along the dragon's spine. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might explode. Dr. Walsh was shouting something into her phone, probably alerting every government agency she could think of. His parents were crying and yelling. The media cameras that were always present caught everything, broadcasting to the world the image of an 11-year-old boy climbing onto a dragon's back. "I'll come back," Lucas called to his parents. "I promise. I'll be safe." He hoped that was true. The red dragon stood, and suddenly Lucas was 15 feet off the ground, gripping scales with white-knuckled hands. Spark made a distressed sound from below, and Lucas felt a pang of guilt for leaving him. But Spark was safe here. The dragons that were being attacked weren't. The red dragon's wings spread fully, casting an enormous shadow across the backyard. Lucas felt muscles bunch beneath him. Then, with a powerful downward thrust that created a wind strong enough to knock over patio furniture, they were airborne. Lucas had never been so terrified in his life. The ground fell away beneath them with stomach-churning speed. The wind tore at his clothes and hair. He pressed himself flat against the dragon's back, holding on with every ounce of strength he had, certain that any second he would slip and fall. But he didn't fall. The dragon's flight smoothed out as they climbed higher, and Lucas dared to lift his head slightly. The view took his breath away. His neighborhood looked like a toy set from up here. The morning sun was just rising, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. And around them, other dragons were taking flight, forming up in a V formation like migrating birds. They were flying toward the attacks. Toward the war that was just beginning. The flight took hours. Lucas lost track of time, his whole world reduced to holding on, staying conscious despite the thin air and cold wind, and watching the ground pass far below. The red dragon flew with purpose, and Lucas could see other dragons joining them from different directions. What had started as a dozen dragons from his backyard had become 30, then 50, then 100. They were heading to Montana, Lucas realized, recognizing the landscape from geography class. That was where one of the biggest dragon populations had been attacked. That was where the war would be won or lost. As they approached, Lucas could see the devastation. Scorch marks on the ground where missiles had hit. Dragons circling in defensive patterns above a valley. And military forces gathered on all sides, tanks and helicopters and soldiers with weapons aimed skyward. The red dragon descended, and Lucas's stomach lurched with the rapid drop in altitude. They landed in the middle of the valley, between the dragons and the humans. Other dragons landed around them, forming a protective circle with Lucas at the center. Lucas slid off the red dragon's back, his legs shaking so badly he almost fell. Soldiers on all sides were shouting, weapons tracking the dragon's movements. Above, helicopters hovered with missiles locked on target. One wrong move and the shooting would start again. Dr. Walsh's voice came through a loudspeaker from somewhere in the military camp. She must have coordinated with them during the flight. Hold your fire. The boy is there. Lucas Bennett is there. Lucas took a deep breath and walked forward, putting himself between the dragons and the nearest line of soldiers. He was still in his pajamas, his feet bare and bleeding from small cuts he didn't remember getting, his hair wild from the flight. He must have looked ridiculous. But he was there, and he had something to say. Stop. His voice cracked, too quiet to carry. He tried again, louder. Stop shooting. Please. A figure emerged from the military side, General Harrison himself, the man who'd ordered the attacks. He was tall and imposing in his uniform, with gray hair and a face like carved stone. Son, you need to step away from those creatures. They're dangerous. They're refugees. Lucas shouted back. They lost their home. Their whole planet. They came here looking for somewhere safe, and you attacked them for no reason. They're gathering intel on our defenses, Harrison said. Using you as cover too. They're learning about Earth because they want to live here. Lucas interrupted. They watch TV. They read books. They listen to music. They're not planning an invasion, they're trying to figure out if humans will let them stay. He gestured to the dragons around him. These dragons could have attacked anyone, anytime. They have fire, they have claws, they can fly. But they haven't hurt anyone. Not once. The only violence has come from us. From you. Harrison's expression didn't change. They are still a threat. We can't risk. I'm the risk. Lucas shouted, surprising himself with his own anger. I'm a bigger threat than they are. I'm human, I could grow up to be a criminal or a terrorist or start a war. Should we shoot all kids just because they might be dangerous someday? Should we kill anything that scares us? He was crying now, tears streaming down his face, but he didn't stop. My parents adopted me when I was 8. I'd been in foster care, bounced around to families who didn't want me. I was scared all the time, didn't know if anyone would ever really want me. And then the Bennetts took a chance on a kid they didn't know, who came from a bad situation, who might have had problems. They chose kindness over fear. Lucas pointed at the dragons. They're just like I was. Scared, alone, not knowing if anyone will want them. And instead of showing them kindness, you're trying to kill them. What does that say about us? What does that say about humanity? The valley had gone completely silent. Soldiers were lowering their weapons slightly, not fully, but enough to show they were listening. The helicopters still circled, but the missiles weren't firing. Lucas pulled out his phone. Miraculously, it had stayed in his pocket during the flight. Dr. Walsh has been documenting everything. We have hours of footage of dragons being peaceful, being curious, being kind. I'm going to show you. He started playing videos on his phone, but they were too small for most people to see. Then, on the military side, someone, Dr. Walsh, probably, projected the videos onto a large screen that had been set up for tactical planning. The footage played. Dragons carefully turning pages in books. Dragons watching documentaries with rapt attention. Dragons swaying gently to music. Spark rubbing his head against Lucas's hand like a puppy. The red dragon bowing respectfully. Dragons bringing gifts, not weapons. These are the threats you're fighting, Lucas said. These are the beings you're killing. Does this look like an invasion to you? General Harrison was watching the footage, his jaw tight. Other soldiers were watching too, and Lucas could see their expressions changing. Doubt. Confusion. Some even looked ashamed. Lucas played one more video. This one was from that morning, before the attacks. It showed Spark playing with a butterfly that had landed in the backyard, his movements gentle and full of wonder. It showed dragons sleeping peacefully in the early dawn light. It showed the red dragon using its claw to very carefully move a bird's nest that had fallen from a tree, placing it back in the branches without harming the eggs inside. "They are not monsters," Lucas said quietly. "They're people. Different from us, yes. Alien, yes. But people. With families and feelings and hopes for the future. And all they want is what any refugee wants, a safe place to live." He turned to face the dragons behind him, then back to the humans. "We have a choice right now. We can choose fear. We can keep fighting, keep killing, until both our species are devastated. Or we can choose kindness. We can choose to share our world with beings who have nowhere else to go. We can choose to be the kind of species that helps instead of hurts." Lucas's voice dropped even lower, but somehow it still carried across the valley. "When I found Spark in that trap, hurt and scared, I could have walked away. It would have been safer. Easier. He bit me when I tried to help him. But I didn't give up, because that's not who I want to be. That's not who humans should be." He looked directly at General Harrison. "So please. Choose kindness. Choose to be better. Choose to show the universe that humans are worth knowing." For a long moment, nobody moved. The standoff continued, balanced on a knife's edge. Then General Harrison did something that shocked everyone. He lowered his weapon and raised his hand, signaling his troops to stand down. "Cease fire," he said into his radio. "All units, cease fire. Stand down." Around the valley, weapons lowered. The tension didn't disappear completely, but it shifted. The immediate threat of violence passed. General Harrison walked forward, slowly, until he was standing in front of Lucas. Up close, the general looked tired and old, the weight of his decision visible in the lines on his face. "You're either the bravest kid I've ever met," he said quietly, "or the craziest. Maybe both." "I'm just scared," Lucas admitted. "Scared that we're going to destroy something beautiful because we don't understand it." Harrison looked at the dragons, really looked at them, perhaps for the first time. Then he looked back at Lucas. "We're going to need time. To figure out how this can work. Where they can settle. How to keep both species safe. This doesn't solve everything." "I know," Lucas said. "But it's a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need." The red dragon made a sound, and all the other dragons responded. It sounded almost like a song, rising and falling in harmonies that no human throat could produce. It was beautiful and alien and full of something that might have been hope. Lucas swayed on his feet, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. The red dragon moved closer, using its body to support him, and Lucas leaned against its warm scales. "Thanks," he murmured. "For trusting me." Dr. Walsh came running across the valley, nearly tripping in her haste. When she reached Lucas, she looked like she wanted to hug him and yell at him at the same time. "That was incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid and probably the most important thing anyone has done in human history," she said all in one breath. "Did it work?" Lucas asked. "Did I stop the war?" "For now," Dr. Walsh said. She looked around at the soldiers standing down, at the dragons singing their strange songs, at General Harrison conferring with his officers. "For now, you stopped it. What happens next? That's going to take time and work and probably a lot of difficult conversations. But yes, Lucas. You did it. You stopped the war." Lucas closed his eyes, exhausted beyond measure. He'd flown on a dragon, faced down an army, and somehow prevented a war between species. And he was still in his pajamas. "Can I go home now?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Dr. Walsh laughed, though it sounded slightly hysterical. "Yes, let's get you home." The red dragon lowered itself again, and Lucas climbed back on for the long flight home. As they rose into the air, Lucas looked down at the valley where humans and dragons were no longer pointing weapons at each other. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't solved. But it was better. And sometimes, better was enough. The change didn't happen overnight. It couldn't. Trust between humans and dragons had to be built slowly, carefully, one interaction at a time. But Lucas's stand in that Montana valley had cracked open a door that had seemed permanently sealed, and now both species were working to push it wider. The first real breakthrough came 3 weeks after the Nay War. A massive wildfire had broken out in Northern California, the kind that threatened to consume entire towns. Firefighters were losing the battle, the flames spreading faster than they could contain them. Lucas was watching the news coverage with his parents when he got an idea. Dragons breathe fire, he said suddenly. They control it. What if they could help? His dad looked skeptical. Lucas, I don't think adding more fire to a wildfire is going to help. But Dr. Walsh, who had become a near-permanent fixture at their house, was already pulling up information on her tablet. Actually, firefighters use controlled burns all the time to stop wildfires. They burn the fuel in the fire's path so there's nothing left for the main fire to consume. It creates fire breaks. But it's dangerous and time-consuming for humans to do. Lucas was already out the door, running to the backyard where the dragons still maintained their protective circle. Over the past weeks, some had left to join other dragon groups, but about 20 remained, including Spark and the red dragon Lucas had started calling Crimson. Crimson? Lucas called. The big red dragon's head swiveled toward him immediately. I need your help. There are humans in danger from fire. Can dragons control fire? Like, make it burn exactly where you want it to and nowhere else. Spark chirped and moved close to Lucas, and for the first time, Lucas heard something that might have been words mixed in with the chirps. The sounds were still alien, but there was a structure to them, almost like language. Dr. Walsh had been teaching Lucas to recognize patterns in dragon communication, and he was starting to understand bits and pieces. Fire, control, yes, Lucas interpreted slowly, uncertain if he was getting it right. Born skill. Spark bobbed his head in what Lucas had learned was the dragon equivalent of nodding. He made more sounds, and Lucas caught words like precise and natural. Within an hour, Dr. Walsh had coordinated with emergency services. 6 dragons, including Crimson, flew to Northern California. Lucas went too, over his mother's loud objections, in a helicopter with Dr. Walsh and a team of firefighters who were willing to try something completely unprecedented. What happened that day would be replayed on news channels around the world for weeks afterward. The dragons worked in perfect coordination with human firefighters, creating controlled burns with surgical precision. They could direct flames exactly where needed, burn off fuel in specific patterns, and most remarkably, they could somehow sense where the main fire was spreading before human technology could detect it. One dragon, a sleek silver one, spotted a family trapped in their house surrounded by flames. She dove through the fire, her scales apparently resistant to heat, grabbed the family's car with her powerful claws, and flew them to safety. The footage of her setting the car down gently in front of stunned firefighters, checking to make sure everyone was okay before flying back into the inferno, went viral within hours. The wildfire was contained in 2 days instead of the projected 2 weeks. Hundreds of homes were saved. 0 human casualties. And suddenly, dragons weren't just aliens to be feared or studied. They were heroes. After that, everything accelerated. In Japan, dragons helped rescue people after a major earthquake, flying into areas where roads had been destroyed and buildings had collapsed. Their strength allowed them to move rubble that would have taken human crews hours to clear. They worked tirelessly for days, apparently not needing much sleep, pulling survivors from wreckage with surprising gentleness. In Australia, a dragon named Azure, who had beautiful blue scales that reminded Lucas of the ocean, demonstrated an ability to purify water. She could heat it to exact temperatures with her breath, killing bacteria and viruses without boiling it away. In regions where clean water was scarce, this ability was revolutionary. Within weeks, dragons were helping establish clean water systems in developing nations around the world. But perhaps the biggest contribution came when a dragon elder named Obsidian, whose black scales looked like polished stone, began sharing knowledge about energy manipulation. Dragons, it turned out, understood physics in ways humans were just beginning to grasp. They had evolved the ability to manipulate gravitational fields. That's how they could fly despite their enormous size. They could store and release energy in their bodies with incredible efficiency. Dr. Walsh assembled a team of the world's best physicists to learn from Obsidian. Lucas was there to help translate, along with Spark, who had become remarkably good at communicating with humans. Watching Spark carefully draw equations in the dirt with his claw, then chirp explanations while Lucas and Dr. Walsh worked to understand, was surreal. But the knowledge being shared could revolutionize human technology, clean energy, more efficient transportation, maybe even faster than light travel someday. Humans, in return, began creating spaces where dragons could truly belong. Dr. Walsh led the United Nations effort to establish dragon sanctuaries, not reservations or containment zones, but actual communities where dragons could live according to their culture while still being part of human society. The first sanctuary was established in New Zealand, in a mountainous region with caves that dragons found comfortable. Humans and dragons worked together to build structures that accommodated both species. buildings with enormous doorways, meeting halls with sections designed for different sizes, parks where dragon young could safely play alongside human children. Lucas visited when the sanctuary officially opened. Walking through those spaces, seeing human kids playing catch with young dragons, watching a human teacher give a lesson to a class of both species, seeing a dragon vendor selling jewelry alongside a human farmer's market, it made something tight in Lucas's chest finally relax. "This is what I hoped for," he told Spark, who was walking beside him. At nearly a year after their first meeting, Spark had grown significantly. He was now about the size of a large horse, though he still acted like an overgrown puppy around Lucas. Spark made a series of sounds, and Lucas was getting good enough to understand most of it. "Home, together, both peoples, good." "Yeah," Lucas agreed. "Good." The United Nations had done something unprecedented. They'd appointed Lucas as a special ambassador for human-dragon relations. At 12 years old, he was the youngest person ever to hold any UN position. His parents had nearly fainted when they found out, but Lucas's unique relationship with the dragons made him irreplaceable. His job was to travel to different communities, helping humans and dragons understand each other. Sometimes it was simple stuff, explaining to dragons why humans found it rude when they stared, or helping humans understand that dragons needed more personal space than humans did. Sometimes it was more complex, mediating disputes, establishing guidelines for interaction, creating educational programs. Lucas's education became a weird hybrid. He still did regular schoolwork, his mom insisted on that, but now his classroom was wherever he happened to be. He'd do math homework on flights between dragon sanctuaries. He'd write essays about history while sitting in UN meetings. His science teacher just gave up and told him that learning physics from dragons probably counted as extra credit. Spark went everywhere with Lucas. The young dragon had become his constant companion, translator, and best friend. It was Spark who helped Lucas understand the finer points of dragon culture. Spark who stood beside him when nervous humans or skeptical dragons questioned whether this integration could really work. Spark who knew when Lucas was overwhelmed and needed a break, and would insist they stop and just hang out for a while. On Lucas's 13th birthday, the dragons did something that moved him to tears. Dragons from around the world brought gifts, not just to Lucas, but to every human who had helped them. They shared their art, beautiful sculptures made of melted and shaped metals that seemed to capture light in impossible ways. They performed songs, their voices creating harmonies that human vocal cords could never produce. They told stories of their lost homeworld, not to make humans feel guilty, but to share their history, to let humans know who they had been and who they hoped to become. And in a ceremony that Dr. Walsh said had never been performed for someone outside their species, the dragons formally adopted Lucas into their clan. Crimson spoke for all dragons present, his deep voice carrying across the assembled crowd of both species. Dr. Walsh translated, her own voice thick with emotion. He says, "Lucas Bennett, you saved our prince when you had no reason to help him. You endured pain to free him. You risked your life to prevent war between our peoples. You have shown us that humans are capable of great compassion. On behalf of all dragons, we name you clan brother. You are one of us, now and forever." Spark stepped forward and touched his forehead to Lucas's, a gesture Lucas had learned was deeply meaningful in dragon culture. It meant trust, affection, family. Lucas hugged Spark's neck, not caring that he was crying in front of thousands of people and dozens of cameras. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for giving humans a chance." The integration wasn't perfect. There were incidents, a dragon who accidentally knocked over a building because they misjudged their size in a human city. Humans who tried to hurt dragons out of lingering fear. Misunderstandings that escalated into conflicts before cooler heads could prevail. But for every problem, there were 100 success stories. Dragon-human partnerships were forming across the world. A dragon named Copper and a human engineer named David Chen revolutionized solar energy technology by combining dragon knowledge with human manufacturing. A young dragon named Pearl and a human marine biologist named Jennifer Ross were working together to clean up ocean pollution. Pearl's ability to dive to incredible depths without equipment allowing them to study ecosystems humans had never been able to reach. In schools, human and dragon children learned together. It was adorable and occasionally chaotic. Dragon kids learned to control their fire-breathing early, but accidents still happened. But watching a human toddler share toys with a dragon hatchling, both of them laughing in their own ways, both just seeing a friend instead of an alien species, that was the future Lucas had hoped for. The biggest change came in how humans saw themselves. Having another intelligent species on Earth forced humanity to confront hard questions. How did they treat other beings? How did they handle differences? What kind of species did they want to be? Lucas thought about this a lot during his travels. He'd started keeping a journal, trying to process everything that had happened. One entry, written late at night in a hotel room while Spark snored softly in the corner, captured his thoughts. A year ago, I was just a kid who liked helping injured animals. Now I'm somehow a bridge between species. People keep calling me a hero, but I don't feel like one. I just did what seemed right, helped someone who was hurt. Everything that came after, all the good stuff, happened because other people made good choices too. Dragons chose to trust us. Humans chose to overcome their fear. Dr. Walsh chose to fight for peace instead of giving up. My parents chose to support me even when they were terrified. The soldiers chose to listen instead of shooting. It wasn't one hero. It was thousands of people choosing kindness, over and over again. When Lucas turned 14, he gave a speech at the UN's annual Human Dragon Summit. By then, dragon sanctuaries existed on every continent. Dragon-human collaboration had advanced human technology by decades in just 2 years. More importantly, a generation of children was growing up for whom dragons were just normal, not aliens, not threats, not even particularly special. Just neighbors. Lucas stood at the podium, Spark beside him on a platform designed to accommodate dragons at speaking events. He looked out at the audience, hundreds of humans and dragons, together. 2 years ago, Lucas began, I found something hurt and scared in the woods behind my house. I helped it because that's what you do when someone needs help. You don't ask where they are from or what species they are or whether helping them will benefit you. You just help. He gestured to Spark. This dragon, my best friend, could have been afraid of all humans after I scared him in those woods. His family could have decided we were all dangerous. Instead, they chose to trust that not all humans were the same. They chose to see the best in us instead of assuming the worst. And humans did the same thing. We could have let fear win. We could have started a war that would have devastated both our species. Instead, enough people chose compassion over fear. Chose curiosity over hatred. Chose to be better than our worst instincts. Lucas's voice grew stronger. We're not perfect. Both our species make mistakes. We still have conflicts and misunderstandings. But we're learning and growing together. We're building something new, not a human world or a dragon world, but a shared world where everyone belongs. He looked at Spark, who chirped encouragingly. I'm not special. I'm just a kid who helped when someone needed it. The real heroes are all of you, every human who chose kindness, every dragon who chose trust, everyone who decided that building bridges was better than building walls. You're the ones who created this new world. I just opened the door. You're the ones who walked through it. The applause was thunderous, a mix of human clapping and dragon wing beats that created a sound like thunder. Lucas stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed and grateful. That night, Lucas sat in his backyard with Spark, looking at the stars. The same backyard where dozens of dragons had first appeared, waiting to thank the boy who'd saved their prince. Do you miss your homeworld? Lucas asked quietly. Spark was silent for a moment, then made a series of sounds that Lucas understood. Miss, yes. But, this, home now. Earth, our world, too. I'm glad you stayed, Lucas said. I'm glad you trusted us. Not trust humans, Spark corrected, his language skills improving daily. Trust you. You show us, humans can be good. You teach us, kindness stronger than fear. Lucas leaned against his friend's warm side. You taught me something too. That being different doesn't mean being dangerous. That the best things in life come from helping others without expecting anything back. They sat there as the stars came out, a human boy and his dragon friend, representatives of two species learning to share a world. Lucas thought about the scared, hurt creature he'd found in that trap. He thought about the impossible chain of events that had led from that one moment of compassion to a new era of human-dragon cooperation. Sometimes, Lucas still couldn't believe it was real. That he, a regular kid who just wanted to help an injured animal, had somehow become part of the most important moment in human history. But then Spark would make a joke that was only funny to dragons, or Lucas would tease him about snoring too loud, and it would hit him. This was real. This was his life. He'd helped save an alien prince, prevented a war, and become best friends with a dragon. And it had all started with one simple choice, to help someone who needed it, even when it was scary and difficult and made no logical sense. Hey Spark. Lucas said. Yes? If you could go back and change things, would you still get caught in that trap? Knowing everything that happened after? Spark thought about it for a long time. Then he made a sound that was unmistakably a laugh. Yes. Best trap, ever. Catch prince, get best friend, unite two worlds. Good trap. Lucas laughed too. Yeah. Good trap. The backyard that had once been filled with dozens of waiting dragons was quiet now, except for one dragon and one boy. But across the world, in sanctuaries and cities and towns, humans and dragons were building a future together. And somewhere, another child was learning that kindness mattered, that compassion could change worlds, and that sometimes the most important thing you could do was help someone who needed it. Even if that someone had scales and breathed fire. Especially then.